Look, I'm about to tell you how I manifested a $50,000 opportunity in 1 year using something called identity frequency mapping. And before you roll your eyes thinking, oh my god, here's another guy talking about manifestation, hold up. I am the kind of Asian who failed at maths, can't play piano, and my parents are still disappointed that I didn't become a doctor. So if I can figure this out, anyone can. Anyone can. But here's the thing, okay? Here's what's going to mess with your head. The money didn't come from working harder. It didn't come from launching another course or grinding 18-hour days. Okay? It came from a conversation at a coffee shop that happened 24 hours after the most powerful identity frequency mapping session that I did. And get this person had been in my network for 3 years. Okay? But I was literally energetically invisible to the opportunity that they presented. And I know that sounds weird, but if someone told me that story, I would have been like, okay, buddy, put your ayahuasca down and pick up a business plan. But I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you exactly what happened. And I want to show you the science of why it worked and the specific processes that shifted my nervous system from broadcasting lack to naturally attracting abundance. Because here's the thing, and I learned this the hard way after maxing out 3 credit cards, trying every technique, investing in coaching and everything, right? So listen carefully. You are not trying to get something you don't have. You are choosing and you are broadcasting as the version of you who already has it. Wow. And that shift, it is not mindset work. It is neurobiological rewiring. So, who is this for? If you have been meditating for years, have done the inner work, have read all the books, but you're still checking your bank account with anxiety. Maybe you are still waiting for that life-changing opportunity. If you know all of the spiritual principles, but you are not living the results, this video is going to show you the missing piece that bridges the gap between knowing and being. So I'm excited for you. However, there is a warning. There is a warning here, fair warning. Okay, this is not going to be another just believe it and receive it video. No. Okay, we are going deep into the neuroscience, the frequency work, and the specific practices that literally rewired my identity at the cellular level. Okay, so buckle up, because by the end of this, you are going to either think I am absolutely insane, or you're going to understand why your current approach to manifestation has been like trying to tune a radio station with a broken antenna. So, where was I last year? Okay, I want you to picture this. I want you to picture the most stereotypical struggling entrepreneur you can imagine, okay? And then I want you to make him Asian, add some glasses for some extra handicap, and somehow he's even worse with money. That was me. That was literally me, okay? So, who was I? I was that guy who would wake up at 4 a.m. to meditate, do gratitude journaling, breath work, cold showers, and affirmations in the mirror because I was basically cosplaying as a successful person while my bank account wasn't reflecting it. And the worst part of it all is I knew all the stuff, okay? I could quote Joe, I could explain quantum physics, I could talk about neuroplasticity like I had a PhD, and I was that person at parties who would corner someone and I would tell them about how their thoughts create reality while secretly having a panic attack because my rent was due. Now, here's the thing, and this is really messed up. I wasn't some manifestation newbie, okay? I've been doing this work for years. I'd been to retreats, not just Joe retreats, but every type of retreat you can think of, even like super woo-woo ones, okay? I read all the books. I've even had my own mystical experiences, and I could drop into theta states. I understood heart coherence. I knew about electromagnetic fields and frequency alignment. However, there was a problem. You know that feeling when you know something should be working, but it's just not? Like when you're following a recipe perfectly, but the cake keeps coming out like concrete. Well, that was my entire relationship with abundance because I had all the ingredients, I was following all the steps, but somehow I kept baking more struggle and more effort, especially when it came to my business and getting out of debt. So this is specifically with business, actually. However, the breaking point was one morning. There was one morning, and I remember because I was doing my morning meditation, and I had this 45-minute beautiful practice where I was doing all the things, mentally rehearsing abundance, feeling gratitude, balancing my energy centers, everything. Okay. And I came out of that meditation feeling like I was on top of the world. I was ready to receive all the universe had to offer. And then I checked my email and then I saw 3 overdraft fees. Okay, 3 overdraft fees. Now, instead of aligning with abundance consciousness, I literally sat there thinking, what is wrong with me? I'm doing everything right. I'm meditating, I'm visualizing, I'm in gratitude, I'm raising my vibration. Why am I still broke? Hey, what's up, my friend? Kevin here. Just a quick heads up for all the entrepreneurs and professionals watching this. If you have been feeling stuck, but you know you're capable of more, I've got a few spots open right now for my one-on-one mentorship. In this program, I'll personally guide you through my identity frequency mapping process to break through the patterns holding you back so you can create the results that you've been chasing. Whether that's more income, more freedom to spend time with your loved ones, or finally living the life that you've envisioned for so long. Now, I can only work with a handful of clients at a time to give you my full attention, and spots tend to actually go very quickly. So if you are interested in making the shift now, then please click on the link below this video, book a call, and let's see if we're a good fit to work together. Now back to the video. Why am I still broke? That's when it hit me. I wasn't actually changing my identity. I was putting on makeup on the same broke Kevin, my broke identity. So, I was someone trying to change their reflection by rearranging the furniture around them. Okay? The mirror doesn't care how zen my meditation corner looks. It doesn't care if I'm the most vegan or I have the best crystals or I say love and light every 2 sentences. Okay? If I am still the same frequency underneath those things don't even matter. Okay? And so, that's when I discovered something that changed everything. And before I tell you what it was, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Okay? Are you doing all the spiritual work, all the inner work, but you are still the same person who gets triggered by the same problems, the same conversations, and the same environment? Are you still the person who checks their bank account with anxiety? Still the person who knows all about abundance but lives in scarcity? Okay? Because that was me too. That was me too. Until I discovered my signature identity frequency mapping. Now, you are not trying to manifest from your current identity. You are trying to become the identity that already has what you want. Okay? Now, I'd heard similar things before, but this isn't about mindset shifts or belief changes. Identity frequency mapping is about literally rewiring your nervous system to operate from a completely different frequency rapidly. You see, here's what I learned. Okay? Here's what I learned. This is a bit nerdy, but stick with me. So, your identity isn't just your thoughts or beliefs. Your identity is an electromagnetic signature. It is the frequency that your nervous system is broadcasting 24/7. And that frequency, it is what determines what you can perceive, what opportunities will show up, and what you can actually receive. Damn. So, here's a analogy about this. I want you to think about it like this. Do you know how dogs can hear frequencies human can't, right? Well, abundance opportunities exist on frequencies that most people's nervous system aren't tuned to receive. Wow. So we are literally walking around deaf to the very things that we are trying to manifest. Ooh, whose buttons am I pushing right now? Okay. But then something unexpected started happening. There was one time during meditation where my breath just changed. It just changed automatically. Not as a cue, but it just shifted on its own. I found myself breathing in a slower, more rhythmic pattern, except it didn't feel forced. Okay? It felt like my body intuitively moving into cadence that it had been craving for or starving for, aka coherence. Right? It was like, oh, relief. Thank God he's not in survival mode anymore. But what happened with my body? Okay? Well, within minutes, everything inside of me started loosening up, started releasing, started softening up. Okay? It's like a pressure valve I didn't know of. I'd been tightening my whole life. It just finally popped. That's what it felt like. My shoulders dropped, my jaw unclenched, and this electric tightness that I had been living, that has been living in the pit of my gut, just started to unravel. Okay, years of that started to unravel. Tears came, not from sadness, not from joy, but from this deep cellular relief. Okay, like my body finally exhaled decades of readiness for emergency chemicals. So I sat there crying, and I sat there crying and laughing at the same time. I was vulnerable and kind of stunned at the same time as well because my external life was unchanged. Okay, I still had the same problems, but inside my nervous system, something fundamentally shifted and recalibrated. And I knew it in a way that wasn't intellectual. It wasn't operating out of constant fight or flight anymore. Okay, that's what it was. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The part that blew my mind, well, my skeptic mind, was the breath pattern that surfaced during meditation wasn't merely relaxation. All right? It wasn't merely relaxation. Over time, I noticed it reliably moved my inner state out of that anxiousness, overthinking beta mode, and into something softer and more expansive. And it was a place where my heart and brain seemed to talk differently. And what happened next was that my sleep improved. Okay? My sleep improved. And my anxiety spikes happened less often. My decisions felt clearer. And I was sticking to my decisions even more. But the best part about all this was that I slept deeper and I felt an openness that I hadn't felt since I was a child. How cool is that? Okay? Now, I'm not claiming that I instantly cracked some mystical code that first morning, but I kept showing up. Okay? I kept showing up and letting that spontaneous breathing cadence happen. It didn't happen like a technique that I learned from someone else. No, it just felt like my body discovering or rediscovering a new way to hold myself. Okay? A way to hold itself. And over the next 2 weeks, I practiced it daily, more out of curiosity than faith, and noticed some subtle, undeniable shifts. I wasn't compulsively checking my emails anymore. I wasn't looking for signs for manifestation, and I wasn't having that 3 a.m. anxious wake ups. They all stopped. Best of all, my head felt quieter. Then, there was a time where my old self, my cheeky old self would creep in. Okay? This was about 2 weeks into it. I almost quit. Okay, I almost quit. Why? Because nothing externally was happening. Nothing obviously has changed externally, but inside there was so much change. No checks in the mail, no miraculous opportunities, no overnight miracles, but it was just me doing this unfamiliar breathing thing and feeling calmer. But still financially strapped. Okay? And I seriously remember thinking, is this just another way to feel better about being poor? Like most of the techniques that I did? And I was about to bail. Okay, I was about to bail when things started to tilt in a direction that I couldn't ignore. So, what happened? So I'm at this coffee shop. Okay? I'm sitting there with my laptop open, trying to manifest my way out of debt. When this guy in the next table starts talking on the phone about a project he was working on. Okay? Now, normally, I would have been headphones in. I'm in my own zone, guy. You know what I mean? That was my usual old self. And so, I would obviously mind my own business when I was doing that. However, this time, something was different. Instead of feeling anxious about my own problems, I was just present. I was curious. And I found myself eavesdropping, even though I don't normally do that. I found myself actually listening to what he was actually saying. He's talking about needing someone with a very specific expertise for his consulting project, okay? And I'm listening there thinking, that sounds exactly like what I do. And back then, I was doing sales and marketing, okay? But here's the weird part. 6 months ago, I would have been too anxious, too in my head, too focused on my own problems to even notice this conversation, let alone act on it. But something in my nervous system had shifted, okay? Here's the shift. I wasn't operating from that desperate, needy energy anymore. I was just curious. Okay? I was just curious. So when he got off the phone, I did something the old me would have never done. I walked over and said, "Hey, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation, but it sounds absolutely fascinating. Mind if I ask what kind of expertise you're looking for?" Okay, that's what I asked him. So it turns out this guy had been looking for someone with the exact background for months. Okay, which was specific to marketing and sales systems. Not just my skills, my specific combination of experience that most people don't have. So, By the end of this conversation, we talked for about 24 minutes, okay? By the end of this conversation, he'd asking me if I'd be interested in consulting on this project, and the contract was $50,000. Now, here's the part that's going to blow your mind, okay? I get home, I'm processing what the heck just happened, and I realize this conversation happened exactly 24 hours after my most powerful identity frequency mapping session, okay? The session where I finally stopped trying to get abundant and started being abundant. But wait, it gets even weirder. I'm on LinkedIn, okay? I'm looking at his LinkedIn profile, and I realized he was a connection from 3 years ago. I've been connected with him for 3 years, all right? And so, he's been in my network this entire time, but I was energetically invisible to the opportunity he presented. Whew. That is crazy. That is crazy. And so, you see, when you're operating from the survival frequency, this is how frequency works. When you're operating from survival frequency, from lack, from desperation, from I need this to work, you literally cannot perceive opportunities that exist on abundance frequency. Okay? It's not that they're not there, it's that your nervous system isn't tuned to receive them because your nervous system is always looking at lack, scarcity, desperation, or I need this to work. All right? So, it's literally about, okay, where am I up to? The radio analogy. Okay. Now, that is like trying to listen to FM radio on an AM receiver. The signal is going to be there. You're broadcasting 24/7, but you can't tune into it because you're in the wrong frequency. That is how simple it is. Okay? And so, what identity frequency mapping actually does is, in the real function of it, is not about changing your thoughts or beliefs, but it is about literally rewiring your nervous system to operate from the frequency of the identity that already has what you want, or simply returning back to your infinite true nature. Wow. Now, the old me, why the old me couldn't have had that conversation? Because the old me, the broke, desperate, anxious version of me, he couldn't have had that conversation. Not because he lacked the skills, but because he was broadcasting a frequency that repelled abundance. He was so focused on what he didn't have that he couldn't see what was right in front of him. I would have been way too in my head overthinking things, hustling harder, focusing on how to get out of debt instead of being present in the moment. Okay? Which reminds me of one of my clients who came to me with stuck in the same income level for 3 years. Okay, she was doing all the manifestation work, but she was still the same person, apologizing for her prices. And after one identity frequency mapping session, she stopped being the person who needed to convince other people of her value and became someone who naturally attracted premium clients. And the result, within 6 weeks, she doubled her business revenue without changing her marketing strategy. Her name is Tucker, and if you would like to see her testimonial, there's a link in the description below. Now, and so the proof wasn't in coincidence, okay? Over the next few months, opportunities started showing up for me everywhere. Not because I was working harder or doing more marketing for my business, but because I was finally operating from the frequency that could be perceived and receive them. My nervous system was finally literally functioning differently, and the stress hormones that had been running my life for years were finally regulated. Now, isn't that worth it? All of those stress hormones finally regulated. Because the real proof wasn't in the numbers, but it was how I felt. For the first time, I wasn't operating from survival mode because my mind was calm. I loved peace. Okay, peace wasn't foreign to me. That frantic, chaotic energy that I was addicted to, now gone. And then peace finally took over. And when I am peaceful within, then my outer world is peaceful externally, because that is what I am broadcasting and that is what the world is reflecting. Does that make sense? Cool. That's when I realized this isn't just about manifestation, but this is about becoming the person who naturally attracts what they want because their entire nervous system is aligned with that reality. Wow. So, you're probably thinking, okay, Kev, this sounds amazing, but how do I actually do this? What is the difference between this and regular meditation? Well, that's a great question. You see, traditional meditation is amazing for awareness, for presence, for spiritual growth. But identity frequency mapping is specifically designed to rewire your nervous system to operate from a completely different identity frequency. So it is the difference between observing your thoughts and literally changing the electromagnetic signature your body is broadcasting. Right? Changing the signature your body is broadcasting. All right? Now, think of regular meditation like learning to drive. Identity frequency mapping is like upgrading your entire car, same destination, completely different vehicle. Okay? So, here's the core of all this. The core of this is a specific breathing pattern that creates what we call heart-brain coherence. Because this isn't just any breathing pattern. It is designed to shift your brainwaves from beta to alpha, theta, and gamma simultaneously. Okay? Which creates this incredibly powerful state for neuroplasticity. Now, how do you breathe like this? Well, it's very easy. Here, and write this down. It goes like this. 4 seconds in, hold it, and then 4 out, and then hold for 4. Okay? Now, the secret to all of this, I didn't write this down, is to get as relaxed as possible. All right? You are breathing into your heart, the space of your heart, and you're generating the feeling of already being the person who already has what you want. Okay? Now, most people try to visualize having money while still feeling broke. That is like trying to tune a radio while jamming the signal. Identity frequency mapping has you become the person who already has it at the nervous system level. Okay? At the nervous system level. Before you even think about the external stuff. So, instead of visualizing $50,000 in my bank account while feeling anxious about rent, I would embody the identity of someone who naturally attracts high value opportunities. Okay? How does that person breathe? How do they carry themselves? How do they make decisions? So, I also have another client who was trying to manifest a relationship for 2 years. Okay, she was doing all the self-love work. She was doing the visualizations, the affirmations. She was going on dates. She was doing Tinder. She was playing with the SPs, using magic to try to manifest her SP and stuff like that. However, she was still the same person who felt incomplete without a partner. Are you doing that? After identity frequency mapping, she stopped being someone who needed love and became someone who naturally attracted. She became love itself. Okay? And so, the result of this was that she met her now boyfriend 3 weeks later at the grocery store, unexpectedly in the unknown. Okay? Now, here's what most people miss. This isn't about the formal sessions. The real magic happens in what I call frequency maintenance throughout the day, right? So, here's what you do. Every time I would catch myself slipping back into survival mode, maybe worrying about money, operating from lack, trying to check my external reality to see if the manifestation has arrived or looking for signs, I incorporated these 60-second practices to get back into abundance frequency. So, here's what I would do. Before checking my email, I would take 3 deep breaths, conscious breaths into my heart space and embody abundance. Okay? Secondly, before any conversations about money or any negotiations, I would do a quick coherence reset. Okay? I would get into a neutral state, into a coherent state, and then become the person who naturally attracts wealth. And I would be making a better decision and speaking better in that negotiation. Now, if anxiety hits, instead of fighting it, I will use it as a signal to realign with my elevated identity. I would allow anxiety to move through me while simultaneously relaxing into it. Here's the secret to all of this. Consistency. The key is consistency, okay? Not perfection, consistency. Because you are literally rewiring neural pathways that have been carved for years of survival programming. And so, this is what nobody tells you. When you shift your identity frequency around money, everything starts to... Wait, I think I missed something. Here's the analogy. It's like creating a new trail through a forest. At first, it's barely visible, okay? It's kind of like just a grassy trail. However, the more you use that trail, it now becomes a stone trail and then ultimately a highway, okay? When it's a highway, you don't even have to consciously do it anymore. So, when you shift your identity frequency around money or abundance, everything else starts shifting too, okay? My relationships started improving because I wasn't operating from scarcity anymore. My health started getting better because I wasn't constantly flooding my body with stress hormones or stress chemicals. My creative ideas started flowing because my nervous system finally had space for inspiration instead of just survival. And so, you're probably thinking, this sounds way too good to be true. Okay? This is just woo nonsense. Get out of here. And I get it. A year ago, I would have thought the same thing. Okay? But here's the thing. This isn't just woo-woo shit. This is measurable neuroscience. Heart-brain coherence is real. It's a documented phenomenon. Okay? Neuroplasticity is proven science. The electromagnetic field generated by your heart is 60 times stronger than your brain's field and can be measured several feet away from your body. So, you don't have to believe in manifestation or quantum physics or any of that stuff. You just have to be willing to try a different approach to rewiring your nervous system. And if you are someone who has been meditating for years but still struggling by the same patterns, this might be the missing piece that you have been looking for. Okay? Because I got to be real with you about something. This work isn't about just manifesting money or opportunities, but it's about fundamentally changing who you are at the identity level. Okay? The person who manifested $50,000, he's not the same person who was maxing out his credit cards 2 years ago or a year ago. Not just because he has more money, but because his entire nervous system operates differently. And let me tell you, that can be scary. Okay? That can be scary. Because when you change your identity frequency, you outgrow some relationships, maybe your friends, sometimes family members. Okay? You got to be ready for that. But you got to ask yourself, is my family members keeping me stuck worth it? Or is my abundance more worth it? Sometimes you got to ask these questions. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in the same reality forever. Okay? And so, there are going to be certain environments that you outgrow. There are going to be certain versions of yourself that felt familiar, even if they weren't serving you. Okay? You have to leave them behind. You're going to outgrow them. So this is going to be an uncomfortable process sometimes, right? Because we have so gotten used to the environments that your old self won't let go easily, and that is comfortable. And I remember 6 months into this work, I was at a family dinner, and my cousin, who always complained about money, like he always did, this time I realized I couldn't relate to him anymore. Okay? Not because I was better than him, no. Because I literally wasn't the same person who used to complain about money. Meaning that me and him couldn't bond about complaining about money anymore. And that was uncomfortable, not just to him, but not just for me, but for him as well. Because it's like, whoa, I'm not as close to this guy now as I think. You get it? You get me? So, the real transformation isn't about getting what you want, but it's about becoming someone who naturally attracts what they want because their entire being is aligned with that reality. And so, once you experience that shift, once you feel what it's like operating from the frequency of your infinite nature instead of survival frequency, you can never go back. You can never go back. Not because you want to go back, but because your nervous system literally won't let you. You've rewired yourself at that level too deep that you will literally have a new baseline. Okay? And it is going to take a lot to get you back into survival and destroy your life. Basically, you have to consciously try to destroy your life to get back into that state. But why would you want to do that? Okay? Now, here's what I want you to understand. I've been doing all of this spiritual work, all of this inner work, meditating, going to all the retreats, but if you have been doing all the spiritual work, all the inner work, meditating, going to all the retreats, but you are still the same person who lets their old self take control, if you know all the abundance, if you know all about abundance, but you're still living in scarcity, I want you to know that you are not broken, okay? You are not doing anything wrong. You just need to bridge the gap between knowing and being. Knowing is intellectual, being is for your body. And that is exactly what identity frequency mapping does, okay? I want to ask you, what would change in your life if you stopped being the person who needs abundance and became the person who naturally attracts it? What opportunities are already in your network, waiting for you to shift to their frequency so that you can perceive them? So, if you would personally like to experience identity frequency mapping for yourself and get over the cycle of trying to heal yourself, then follow the links in my description. You can speak to either me or one of my team members, and let's see if it's a good fit. But let me leave you by saying, you are not trying to get something you don't have. You are returning to your infinite nature and are choosing the money, the opportunities, the abundance. It's already there. All you need to do is broadcast on a frequency your current nervous system just isn't tuned in to receive yet.